St. Aldwyn. On the hill was the sort of English village that seemed purposely designed to decorate Christmas cards. In December, when frost delicately traced its cobbled lanes and curled along the ivy-throttled cottages, the village glowed with a warmth both sentimental and reassuring. Smoke spiraled politely from chimneys, the church bell tolled with a mellow dignity, and the villagers exchanged greetings with the quiet triumph of people who considered themselves custodians of tradition. At the highest point of the village stood Hawthorne Grange, a handsome Georgian manor belonging to the Whitcomb family, whose Christmas Eve gatherings were a cherished local event. The grand house, with its stone lions, iron gates, and sweeping drive, was always adorned with majestic fir trees, wreaths made of holly and ivy, and ribbons that sparkled like fresh ice in the pale winter sunlight. Each year, the Whitcombs hosted a festive dinner and carols, followed by a convivial exchange of gifts. This particular winter, however, the mood inside Hawthorne Grange was more strained than joyful. As fate would have it, Miss Jane Marple, the quietly formidable spinster from St. Mary Mead, had accepted an invitation from her old friend Mrs. Constance Whitcomb to spend the holiday weekend at the manor. Miss Marple, wrapped in a dove, grey scarf knitted decades ago by her late mother, arrived by hired motorcar just as the last pink strokes of sunset brushed the snowy landscape. The butler, Mr. Baines, a solemn man with eyebrows like awnings, greeted her at the door. "Delighted to have you with us again, Miss Marple," he said, taking her coat with a gracious bow. "Thank you, Mr. Baines," she replied, her blue eyes twinkling. "How very pretty the house looks! I see Mrs. Whitcomb hasn't lost her touch." Inside, the entrance hall was dominated by a towering Christmas tree nearly 12 feet tall, decked in glass baubles, golden garlands, and candles set into brass holders. Beneath it lay packages wrapped so beautifully that one might forgive even the most unimpressed guest for lingering over them. Miss Marple paused, admiring the tree. Yet something, she could not say what, felt faintly amiss. A tremor of unease passed through her, almost as though the house itself held its breath. Mtin Hegius ELD. Constance Whitcomb, stylish despite her 68 years, bustled forward with open arms. "My dear Jane! How perfectly splendid that you managed to come. I declare Christmas wouldn't be the same without you." "You are too kind, Constance," Miss Marple said modestly. "I only hope I shan't be underfoot." "Nonsense, Jane. We need your good sense this year, more than ever." Constance lowered her voice. "Families, you know, they do try one." Miss Marple nodded sympathetically. Families, with their jealousies, small resentments, unspoken grievances, were often more complicated than the most wicked criminal case. Constance quickly ushered her friend into the drawing room, where the guests were gathered for tea before supper. "Allow me to introduce our Christmas party," she said. "TS1, Leonard Whitcomb, Constance's stepson, a tall, angular man of 50, with a stern mouth and thinning hair. He ran the family estate with a cold, businesslike efficiency. Leonard greeted Miss Marple with what could charitably be called a practiced politeness. 2. Helena Whitcomb, Leonard's young wife, barely 30, strikingly beautiful, with dark hair, pale skin, and a tendency to observe rather than speak. She offered Miss Marple a gracious smile that did not fully reach her eyes. 3. Dr. Cyril Ashdown, the village physician, a handsome bachelor in his 40s, known for his level-headedness. He was a long-time friend of the Whitcomb family and had been invited to stay for the holiday. 4. Mr. Oliver Grant, a visiting solicitor, round-faced and jolly. He claimed to be spending Christmas with the Whitcombs. For the sake of good company, though his glance occasionally drifted toward Linard with an air of professional significance. 5. Margaret Reed, the housekeeper, middle-aged, sharp-eyed, efficient. Though not technically a guest, she had a presence in the household that made her impossible to overlook. Each greeted Miss Marple warmly, some warmer than others. Helena, in particular, seemed relieved to see someone as neutral and unthreatening as Miss Marple. "I've heard so much about you," she said softly. "Mrs. Whitcomb speaks very highly of you." "Most undeserved, I'm sure," Miss Marple replied, "though I cannot deny I have a certain fondness for observing human nature." "Quite," Helena murmured, as though the admission unsettled her. "ATMO Sidaro Funiace." The drawing room was filled with festive decor, yet beneath the warmth and light lurked a tension as crisp as the wind outside. Leonard sat stiffly in his armchair, tapping his foot with impatience. Helena perched near the fire, twisting her wedding ring when she thought no one watched. Dr. Ashdown seemed unusually contemplative, while Oliver Grant laughed a little too loudly. Miss Marple sipped her tea, making polite conversation as she absorbed these small, telling details. Constance leaned toward her. "You see what I mean, Jane? Something is dreadfully wrong. Leonard has been impossible these past weeks, irritable one moment, silent the next. And Helena?" She glanced anxiously at the young woman. "I believe she's miserable, though she won't say why." "Most unfortunate," Miss Marple murmured. "But trouble rarely arises without cause, my dear." "Indeed. And I cannot shake the feeling that something dreadful is—" "Oh, but there I go, being dramatic." Miss Marple smiled gently. "Not at all. One learns with age that presentiments are often rooted in something very real. Teach Genna Pa why. Supper that night was lavish roast goose, potatoes roasted in dripping, winter vegetables, and plum pudding doused with brandy. The conversation, however, was strained. Leonard complained about estate finances. Helena retreated into silence. Oliver attempted to lighten the mood. Dr. Ashdown asked polite questions no one truly answered. Miss Marple observed quietly, noticing how Margaret Reed hovered near Helena with an almost protective vigilance, how Constance winced at Leonard's sharp remarks, and how Helena glanced at Dr. Ashdown more than once. Glances marked not by romance, but by fear. When dinner ended, the group returned to the drawing room. The Christmas tree glittered in the dim light. Leonard poured himself a second brandy and paced restlessly. "Sit down, Leonard," Constance said sharply. "You're wearing a trench in the carpet. I should think a man may pace in his own house," he retorted before catching himself. "Forgive me, I'm on edge." "Quite understandable this time of year," Oliver Grant said smoothly. Leonard shot him a hostile look. Miss Marple felt certain that something legal hung between the two men, something serious. Skade NCDINBYTHETIE. Helena crossed the room toward the Christmas tree, studying the packages nestled beneath it. "They look lovely," she murmured. Leonard snapped, "Don't touch them." Startled, Helena stepped back. "I wasn't." But Leonard's face had gone pale. He stared fixedly at a small parcel wrapped in green paper and tied with silver ribbon. Miss Marple saw a flicker of panic cross his face before he turned away abruptly. "Margaret," he barked. "I'll have coffee." "Strong?" "Yes, sir," she said, though she watched him with a look that hovered between suspicion and concern. Helena lingered near Miss Marple. "He's been like this for days. I hardly recognize him." Miss Marple touched her hand kindly. "Christmas brings out many emotions, my dear. Some pleasant, some not." Helena nodded, though she seemed unconvinced. "Text storm." Later that night, a sudden storm descended upon St. Aldwyn, on the hill. Wind thrashed the trees, ice clattered against windows, and snow fell so thickly one could see only a few feet into the darkened grounds. Miss Marple retired early, claiming a need to rest her eyes. But she did not sleep. She sat in her comfortable guest room, knitting needles clicking softly as she replayed the evening's tensions. Families, she reflected, were seldom what they presented to the world, and marriages, well, she had seen too many of those unravel beneath the quiet weight of expectations. Something was very wrong here. She could sense it. At 11:30, she heard hurried footsteps in the corridor. A door opened. Voices whispered sharply. She rose, peeked out, and caught sight of Helena hurrying downstairs, shawl clutched around her shoulders. Moments later, Leonard followed, his face thunderous. Miss Marple hesitated, but curiosity, supplemented by genuine fear for Constance's peace of mind, compelled her to descend as well, quietly, cautiously. Deskavawa of T-Boy. The drawing room was dark save for the soft glow of the Christmas tree candles. Shadows swayed across the walls as branches trembled in the wind outside. Helena stood trembling near the tree. Leonard loomed behind her. Dr. Ashdown was already present, crouched near the hearth. Constance arrived next, gasping as she saw what lay under the lowest boughs of the Christmas tree. A figure, male, motionless, lay sprawled among the wrapped gifts, as though placed there deliberately. Snow dusted his coat, suggesting he had come in from outside. Oliver Grant burst in. "Good heavens." Margaret Reed clasped a hand to her mouth. Miss Marple stepped closer. Her heart tightened, though her expression remained calm. The man was in his mid-40s, unknown to any of them, with a thin face and a nasty bruise along his temple. A faint smell of spirits hung around him, but Miss Marple instantly detected something else. The wrongness struck her as firmly as a blow. Dr. Ashdown touched the man's wrist. Then he looked up grimly. "He's dead." Helena let out a strangled cry. Leonard muttered, "This is absurd." Constance whispered. "Under my Christmas tree." Miss Marple's gaze drifted toward the parcel Leonard had reacted to earlier, the green one with silver ribbon, now partly crushed beneath the man's arm. She felt the little prickle again, the quiet voice of intuition that had never failed her. Something terrible had taken place at Hawthorne Grange. Something planned. Something hidden. And Christmas Eve had only just begun. A silence heavy as snowfall settled over the drawing room. Only the faint, intermittent crackle of the hearth broke the stillness, yet even that seemed unwelcome, as if fire itself dared not intrude upon the grim tableau before them. Miss Marple waited patiently, her hands folded before her, until Constance found her voice. "But who is he?" Constance whispered. "What is he doing here? Baines would never, no one could possibly have let him in. There are other ways into a house," Miss Marple murmured, glancing toward the frosted windows, "especially in such dreadful weather. A determined man may find a side entrance unlatched, or a servant's door not properly fastened." Dr. Ashdown rose, brushing snow from his knees. "He has been dead no more than half an hour, I'd estimate. Possibly less. An accident, then," Oliver Grant suggested, though his voice wavered. "The poor fellow may have wandered in out of the storm, slipped, and Leonard cut him off. There are no footprints in the hall, and the door was bolted. I locked it myself after you arrived earlier, Grant. No one came through the front." He spoke sharply, but Miss Marple noted the way Helena shivered, drawing her shawl closely around her. Dr. Ashdown cleared his throat. "Better ring the police. Superintendent Graves will want to see this." Constance nodded frantically. Yes, of course. Oh dear, on Christmas Eve of all nights." "Christmas Eve has seen its share of wickedness," Miss Marple said quietly. "One mustn't expect villains to respect holidays." Leonard shot her a hostile glance. "I suppose you've already decided this is foul play, Miss Marple." "Oh, I rarely decide anything at first glance," she replied calmly. "But I do find it unusual for a complete stranger to expire neatly beneath a Christmas tree, don't you?" T-Pol-ICRV. Within 30 minutes, Superintendent Graves braved the storm and arrived at Hawthorne Grange. A tall, broad man with a walrus moustache and a habit of sniffing, as though perpetually suspicious of cold air, Graves greeted Miss Marple with a weary but respectful nod. "Evening, Miss Marple. Trust you're well despite the circumstances. As well as one can be when confronted with a corpse in the drawing room," she replied gently. Graves surveyed the household, who had gathered anxiously near the hearth. "Right, let's see the poor devil." He knelt beside the body, inspecting the bruise, clothing and pockets. No identification on him, nothing at all except this. He produced a small scrap of paper from the man's coat. "Torn. A thorn. Could be the end of Hawthorne Grange." Constance gasped. Helena lowered her eyes. Leonard remained expressionless, arms folded. "Anyone could carry a scrap with thorn on it. Doesn't prove he came here intentionally." "No," Miss Marple agreed. "But it makes it rather more interesting that he died here." Graves sniffed. "Quite." He turned to the group. "Now then. Which of you last saw this room unattended?" Margaret Reed spoke hesitantly. "Sir, I checked all the fires around 10. Everything was in order then, no stranger here. After that, I was in the kitchen with the staff. We heard nothing unusual." "And the butler?" Graves asked. "Mr. Baines retired early, sir. He has the influenza." Graves made a note. "And none of you saw or heard anything odd?" Helena's voice trembled. "There was a noise, a sort of thump. Leonard and I came down to see, and then we found him under the tree." Leonard scowled. "If the fellow forced his way in, the storm would have covered the sound." "Possibly," Graves said, "but the hall is clean. Not a speck of snow." "Strange that." "Strange indeed," Miss Marple thought. Her eyes strayed again to the green parcel with the silver ribbon, now displaced from where it had originally rested. Something about the wrapping paper tugged at her memory. Graves continued questioning, but no one admitted knowing the man, or having any reason to harm him. Yet Miss Marple could not ignore the flutter of unease in her stomach. She knew enough of human nature to see when fear, guilt, or secrets pulled at the corners of a person's composure, and there were secrets aplenty in Hawthorne Grange. Sabialos arvios. When the police withdrew to examine the grounds, Miss Marple approached the body herself, careful not to disturb anything. Dr. Ashdown watched her with respectful interest. "You believe this is murder?" "I believe," she said softly, "that people seldom collapse conveniently under Christmas trees unless someone guided them or placed them there." Dr. Ashdown nodded grimly. He wasn't killed by the fall alone. That bruise, it came from a sharp blow. Not accidental. You're quite sure? Quite. Miss Marple felt the little click inside her mind, the beginning of a pattern forming. Anan uninace birakafest. Christmas morning dawned grey and oppressive. The snow had piled high on the window ledges, muffling the world outside. The members of the household gathered reluctantly for breakfast, each bearing the marks of a troubled night. Leonard was irritable, snapping at the maid for bringing the wrong marmalade. Helena looked pale and exhausted. Oliver Grant fiddled nervously with his napkin. Constance was distraught. Only Miss Marple seemed calm, quietly buttering her toast while her eyes studied each face in turn. Superintendent Graves joined them shortly before 9. Well, he announced, the storms blocked the lane. We won't get reinforcements until the plough comes through. In the meantime, we've searched the grounds and outbuildings. No sign of where the victim came from, or how he got in. How very odd, Miss Marple murmured. More than odd, Graves agreed. The back doors were all locked from the inside. No forced entry. No footprints except those of the household, suggesting, Miss Marple said, that he did not walk in alone. Helena flinched sharply. Leonard clenched his jaw. You're implying someone here brought him in. I imply nothing, Miss Marple said, smiling serenely. I merely point out what the facts suggest. Graves cleared his throat. We've set a constable to watch the room with the body. No one goes in or out without my say, so, Helena whispered, may we not remove him? It seems so ghastly leaving him under the tree. Graves shook his head. Not until we know what killed him. Miss Marple gently patted Helena's hand. The dead, my dear, mind far less than the living. Later that morning, Miss Marple found Helena alone in the library, staring blankly out at the snow-covered lawns. The younger woman jumped when Miss Marple entered. Oh, Miss Marple, I didn't hear you. My dear, you are trembling. Sit down. Helena obeyed mechanically. Miss Marple poured tea from the pot someone had left warming. A cup of tea can do wondrous things for the nerves, she said, handing it to Helena. Now tell me, what troubles you? Helena hesitated. It's nothing. I'm merely upset by the death. That is natural. But your fear began long before the poor man was found under the tree. Helena's cup rattled. You noticed. My dear child, one notices everything if one has lived long enough. You are afraid of something or someone. Perhaps of what that parcel contained. Helena's eyes widened. I don't know what was in it, but you feared it. A long pause, then, barely a whisper. Yes. Why? Helena swallowed. Because Leonard has been receiving anonymous letters, horrible letters, threatening him. I thought perhaps someone meant to hurt him. Miss Marple's eyebrows rose. Threaten him over what? I don't know, Helena said miserably. But Leonard has changed these past months. He's constantly on edge, and the letters he burned them. How many? 6. Maybe 7. Did anyone else know? The young woman shook her head. Only me. And Margaret. She once saw a letter before he snatched it away. Most interesting, Miss Marple murmured. E-N-T-R-V brush Margaret Reed. Miss Marple next found Margaret Reed in the pantry polishing silverware. Mrs. Reed, Miss Marple began. May I trouble you with a question? Margaret stiffened. About what, ma'am? Margaret set down the silver brush. I didn't mention them to the police. Not my place. Perhaps not. But you saw one? A nasty thing, said Mr. Leonard would pay dearly for his sins. Black writing, jagged, like someone scratched it in anger. And Mr. Leonard's reaction. To destroy it. He looked frightened, ma'am. I've never seen him frightened in all my years here. Miss Marple considered this. And Helena. She's unhappy, ma'am. I worry for her. He's not the easiest of husbands. You are fond of her? A good girl, Margaret said firmly. Too good for some. Miss Marple tucked this away in her mind. Margaret's loyalty to Helena was absolute, which meant she would lie for her, or kill for her. Oliver Grant was pacing the study, chewing his pipe stem without lighting it. Miss Marple entered quietly. Oh, Miss Marple, terrible business, isn't it? Yes, she said. And one wonders what brought you here this year, Mr. Grant. Solicitors seldom spend holidays with clients unless something pressing requires attention. He flushed. Well, there were certain estate issues to discuss with Leonard. Serious ones, possibly. But I can't disclose details without his permission. Miss Marple smiled. When a man begins burning letters, Mr. Grant, His financial affairs are seldom trivial. Grant paled visibly. You know about the letters. I know enough. Grant hesitated. Miss Marple, I swear I had nothing to do with the man under the tree. I never suggested you did, but you think one of us did. Miss Marple's voice was mild. One must consider the simplest explanation, that the dead man was connected to someone in this house. Grant swallowed hard. If that is true, then this is far worse than we imagined. Leonard was in the smoking room, decanter in hand. If this is about the letters, he snapped before Miss Marple could speak. You needn't concern yourself. You are quite wrong, Miss Marple said gently. I always concern myself with letters that precede murder. Leonard's hand trembled violently, brandy sloshing. You think I killed that man? I think, Miss Marple said, that you know more than you admit. Leonard glared. He was a stranger. I have never seen him. You are lying, Miss Marple said softly. Leonard froze. What? Your face betrayed you when you saw the parcel. You knew something, or feared something, and the bruises on that poor man suggest a struggle. A personal one. Leonard sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Miss Marple, he whispered, I am being blackmailed. Over what? He looked up, eyes haunted. Over a crime I never committed. A NDCOE. Before Miss Marple could inquire further, Superintendent Graves burst in. Miss Marple, everyone, come quickly. They hurried to the drawing room. The tree stood dark, its candles extinguished. The constable lay unconscious beside it, and the green parcel with the silver ribbon was gone. Miss Marple felt her heart begin to race. Someone in the house was desperate. Desperate enough to steal evidence from beneath a corpse. Desperate enough to kill again,